Hi, I'm Charles Purcell. This is the log for Monday, July 20. July the 20th. On this day in history, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. 10:56 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I was a kid watching in my parents' living room on our big color TV. You know, the kind of TVs that used to sit on the floor? The big ones, the big cabinets. We took a picture. Boy, I wonder where that picture is. I think it was a Polaroid. Yeah, we took pictures of the television set. And I don't know if someone in my family still has that. I hope so. I know I don't have it. Did you take pictures? Were you around? First of all, were you around? You had to be getting to be pretty old now to even have been around for that. But, oh yeah, I remember it well. It was a warm, clear summer night, 10:56 p.m. Eastern, so that would have been 9:56 Central. So kind of the perfect time, right? I don't know if they planned that. Did they plan that for kind of prime time viewing? Couldn't have been better. 9:56 p.m. You got the whole day to anticipate. And, kids staying up late, playing outside in the yard till it got dark. Then coming in and all ready for the big moment. And yeah, we snapped pictures. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I heard Neil Armstrong interviewed once, and he said that's not what he intended to say. He intended to say that's one small step for a man, as in one singular man, one giant leap for mankind. So that's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. That's what he planned to say. But he was a little bit nervous. Can't blame the guy. You know, I'd have to look this up. Maybe you can tell me. I don't remember this, but were a lot of people against this, or was it universally kind of acclaimed? My memory is that pretty much everybody was excited about it. Of course, Richard Nixon was in office at the time of the moon landing, but John F. Kennedy, the president credited with making it happen, setting the priorities, and then through the decade, it remained a priority. Can't help but think that if that happened these days, a Democratic president proposes it, which automatically means that half the country has to oppose it. And even though we had plenty of acrimony in the 1960s, to say the least, at least we didn't have this sort of automatic knee-jerk, I'm bad, you're good. I don't know. Even the most profound disagreements. You know, you put Timothy Leary or Allen Ginsberg or some hippie from the Haight on the Dick Cavett show along with some big banker or William F. Buckley, at least they'd have some common references. They'd be able to speak to each other. They'd be able to debate each other, agreeing on the same basic facts of reality. Regardless of how disparate their views were, they could communicate with each other, and the audience at home could understand the arguments and make something of it. As an old geezer who's lived through a few different iterations now of the American experience, I can tell you that such a thing was possible, and it happened all the time. There's that great scene in the documentary I'm Not Your Negro, where James Baldwin is debating with some very traditional old white philosophy professor. And it's on the, the Mike Douglas show or something. That was actually possible in those days. And it seems nearly impossible now. Well, we got a lot to get to today. I'm not going to solve that problem in the next 20 minutes. So let's just continue with some headlines here and see what sparks our interest. Oh, no, this headline sparked my interest. U.S. Supreme Court sides with goats on Al Johnson's roof. Yeah, you heard that right. U.S. Supreme Court sides with GOATs, G-O-A-T-S, on Al Johnson's roof. Sister Bay, Wisconsin, that's up in Door County, the northern part of the peninsula that juts out into Lake Michigan there. Sister Bay is a nice little town. Al Johnson's Swedish restaurant has been a popular attraction for anyone traveling to Door County for its grass-covered roof and its herd of grass trimmers. But a lawsuit by a New York attorney against Al Johnson's sought to cancel the Goats on a Roof of Grass trademark owned by the well-known restaurant in Sister Bay. That years-long petition has been denied by the U.S. Supreme Court. The court decision not to hear the case has ended the debate. The lawsuit has been trying to strip the restaurant of its trademark since 2011. Attorney Todd Bank claimed it was demeaning to goats. A federal circuit court ruled Bank didn't have any standing to bring the lawsuit since he didn't have a legitimate commercial interest such as a competing trademark, and he didn't suffer any damages from the claimed disparaging remarks about goats. I guess he just is a fan of goats? I don't know. The court also ordered Bank to pay costs and attorney's fees to Al Johnson's Swedish restaurant for bringing a frivolous lawsuit, pointing out that Bank petitioned the trademark trial and appeal board 3 times, which were all dismissed for lack of standing, then appealed to federal court making the same arguments. With the Supreme Court decision, the goats on a roof of grass will continue to graze. That report from WBAY news staff. I guess that's a Green Bay, Wisconsin radio station, television station. I don't know. WBAY. All right, so there you go. The goats. The goats are good. Hey, speaking of the Supreme Court, I guess you've heard by now that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the greatest living American, has disclosed her cancer treatment. You know, we all know she's been in and out of the hospital, and she's had cancer, and she's fought it back a few times. And well, she insisted on Friday, let's see, this is from Politico. Ginsburg insisted on Friday that she was still on top of her job, saying she remained fully able to handle her work full steam. It's unclear just what prompted Ginsburg to publicly acknowledge on Friday that her cancer had returned. It's been about a year and a half. She was in the hospital again early last week for an infection that may have been caused by a clogged stent placed in her bile duct last year. I don't want to hear that. That may have altered the calculus about continuing to keep the liver cancer under wraps. Ginsburg's Friday afternoon statement suggested she decided to break her 5-month silence about the recurrence because she's confident she's getting better. Satisfied that my treatment course is now clear, I am providing this information, she wrote. So, okay, that's fine. I suppose you could have some debate. Public officials' health status should be public, I guess. I'm not sure where I fall in that debate. Someone's health, certainly privacy of any individual is expected when it comes to one's health. Not sure how much a public official is an exception to that rule. Now, I think in a case like this, a lifetime appointment, she's getting her work done. I think she has the right to privacy. She's not up for re-election. Now, in the case of an elected official, especially if an election is coming up, yeah, then you can make a pretty strong argument, I would say, that we should know, the voters should know. So, for example, say it's a incumbent president who's up for re-election. Yeah, we should know. And whatever challenger that president has, we should know about the challenger's health. Yeah, you can definitely make that argument. Nope, I have no problem with that. But now say it's a president in their second term, and they're getting the job done. It's maybe a case like Ginsburg. Maybe they're being treated for something, but they're fully able to do the work. They're not up for re-election. Maybe that changes the equation. I think it probably does. Then I think the right to their privacy does supersede that of our so-called right to know. If they're getting their job done, what's it to us? So they're not. That's not black and white. I think there are definitely variations on how you can land on that question. Well, of course, the big news. I don't know if you can even say that these days anymore. It's all too big. But of course, the great John Lewis passed away at the age of 80. Of course, we all know iconic civil rights leader, marched with Martin Luther King, the famous March on Washington, represented Georgia in the House of Representatives for many, many years. Served as chairman of SNCC, which actually I'd forgotten about. I forgot he did that for 3 years, from 63 to 66. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I'd forgotten about that until we talked about him this weekend. Anyway, so great inspirational leader, as well as a tactical one, getting it done. Plenty has been said, nothing original I have to add, except to say that it's too bad that on the very same day, C.T. Vivian died. And I'll admit, I hadn't heard of C.T. Vivian. Cordy Tyndall Vivian died at the age of 95 of natural causes. Civil rights leader, participated in the Freedom Rides. So that's too bad. Maybe he didn't get the attention that he would have gotten otherwise. Or maybe it helped to get him more attention. I don't know. It's kind of like if someday, if and when Bruce Springsteen ever dies, if Rick Springfield dies on the same day, that'll either steal his thunder or get him some attention that he might not have had otherwise. Now, something that came up immediately, I would bet everything I own on this. They're going to change the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They're going to change the name to the John R. Lewis Bridge. There's already a petition out there. I think people have already written up the legislation. There's just no getting around it. James Clyburn was on one of the Sunday shows, and he talked about this, as have others. So, of course, the infamous Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, where John Lewis got his head knocked in by cops. Yeah, they need to, as has been suggested, they need to paint the thing, redesign it, and rename it. The John Lewis Bridge. Obviously. Of course. Perfect. How do you not do that? I guarantee that'll happen. Now, Clyburn also suggested something that I liked. You may have forgotten about H.R. 4, House Resolution 4, to amend the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to revise the criteria for determining which states and political subdivisions are subject to Section 4 of the Act and for other purposes. Passed by the House, let's see, I guess passed by the House in 2019? It's been kicking around since 2015. I'm looking right now at govtrack.us. Early versions introduced in 2015, 17, introduced in 2019. Passed by the House in December of last year and has not seen the light of day in the Senate, of course. And it simply reinforces the section of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which has been watered down through legislation over the years, that requires some states and some jurisdictions to show evidence that they are not suppressing the vote. So Clyburn suggests, here's what we really ought to do, in addition to renaming the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and I'm sure lots of bridges and streets and schools and all sorts of folks are going to honor John Lewis. With all this conversation about statues we've been having, there's a great example of a pretty easy substitution if you want to get rid of some racist Confederate soldier or slave trader. Yeah, for every statue you tear down, there are lots of options. for new, more appropriate statues. And John Lewis's figure will rise in statues around the country. You better know that. Certainly in Georgia. And Alabama, I think, is born in Alabama. Edmund Pettus himself, which I did not know until, again, it takes news items to learn things. It's something we don't really think about. I don't know. Maybe you do. I'm thinking about way too much all the time. It never occurred to me to even think about who Edmund Pettus was. Well, he's a bridge. Edmund Pettus Bridge. That's all. I didn't take it any further than that. Well, he was a politician. He represented Alabama in the United States Senate around the turn of the century. And he was a scumbag, bigot, racist, one of these guys. He was a big-time Confederate, big advocate for slavery. He was a bad guy. In 1877, named Grand Dragon of the Alabama Ku Klux Klan. That's Edmund Pettus. And to this day, we've got a bridge named after him? Lord mercy. So that's just a slam dunk no-brainer. That's got to happen. Oh, God, Lord. Did you hear this one? Marco Rubio sends out a tweet. It was an honor to know and be blessed with the opportunity to serve in Congress with John Lewis, a genuine historic American hero. May the Lord grant him eternal peace. That's nice. Except the picture that goes along with that tweet is a picture of Marco Rubio with the late Elijah Cummings. Good God in heaven. Are you kidding me right now? Come on. Come on, Marco. He tweets a picture of himself with Elijah Cummings, mistaking him for John Lewis. But to his credit, at least he fessed up to it. He sends out another tweet. Earlier today, I tweeted an incorrect photo. John Lewis was a genuine American hero. I was honored to appear together in Miami 3 years ago at an event captured in video below. And so he sends a video with him and John Lewis. And then he's not alone. Senator Dan Sullivan, Republican of Alaska. Condolences to the Lewis family as the country mourns the loss of a great civil rights leader. And Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska did the same damn thing. Sends out a picture of himself with Elijah Cummings. Now, I get people mixed up all the time, just because I don't pay that much attention. You know, the classic Lawrence Fishburne getting confused with Samuel L. Jackson. Problems like that. And more contemporary artists, the younger guys, I have no idea because I don't pay close enough attention. I have the same problem with the white boys, too. I mean, I don't know Leonardo DiCaprio from Matt Damon, from Johnny Depp. I don't know. Put them in a lineup, I'll get them confused. So, yeah, you can make that mistake. But the senators? There are only 100 senators. You work with these guys. I mean, come on. Unbelievable. Speaking of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it got me thinking and curious about what kind of opposition that had. And I think it's worth a reminder for all of us that every advance throughout history has wild opposition, sometimes pretty hefty, even majority opposition at some times. So, for example, I went to the Library of Congress, I'm looking at it right now, regarding the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And it gives what they call a legal timeline going all the way back to 1640. Every court decision and state federal law that led finally to the act, going all the way back to 1640. And it's really interesting to look at the timeline. And you could do this with anything. Do it with women's rights. Do it with LGBTQ rights. At every stage, there are victories, some small, some large, and with each victory, the enemy is vanquished, or at least beaten in that round. So it's a reminder that we all need, and hopefully the life of John Lewis and his inspiring words will live for a while, because we not only need, as Clyburn pointed out, H.R. 4, which reinforces elements of the 65 Voting Rights Act, we need the same thing through legislation. It's one thing to demand change. It's another thing to actually make the change. And as much as it sounds distasteful to us, we have to do it through this onerous process of legislation. The 1964 Civil Rights Act prohibited discrimination in public accommodations and employment, authorized the Attorney General to bring school desegregation suits, and the federal government to withdraw funds from schools and other governmental entities receiving federal funds if they discriminated, and provided enhanced enforcement mechanisms for protecting civil and voting rights. So has the full promise of the 1964 Civil Rights Act been fulfilled? Obviously not. Of course not. But it led to things like the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, Family and Medical Leave Act 1993, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. See, this is the beauty of legislation. And now the Black Lives Matter movement is demanding things like defund the police, a reallocation of budgeting away from draconian policing to social services. There's still, to this day, structural inequities in education, health, housing. And the life and work of John Lewis, proof positive that change is possible. The famous quote now that's being spread everywhere: if you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something about it. If you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something about it. You know, that made me think I've been way too nice. I've been way too understanding. Now, nobody was nicer or more understanding than John Lewis. By all accounts, he was this beautiful spiritual guy. But he didn't take it to the point where he'd say, oh, you do you, which is an expression I just despise. Everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own pain. Everybody has their own upbringing. This level of kindness and understanding that results in a kind of passive forgiveness of people. Oh, you can't ask someone to do anything. We're all having our own struggles. Let's all just understand each other. No, John Lewis demanded that if we see something that's not right and not fair, that we have a moral obligation to do something. These are words. This is a sentiment that needs to be repeated. An idea that needs to be reinvigorated, re-energized. And the current protesters are trying to do that. But too many on the sidelines are way too willing to say, if you see something that's not right or not fair, well, take care of yourself first. Make sure you're okay. And you do you. No. You have a moral obligation. That sounds pretty old-fashioned, doesn't it? It shouldn't. It shouldn't sound old-fashioned. You and I have a moral obligation to make things right. Yep. So let John Lewis be our inspiration. And let the current movement be an inspiration. And I guess the point I was trying to make earlier is that, yeah, at each step along the way, there is opposition, sometimes quite strong opposition. I really think we have to lose the idea that we somehow have to convince our opposition to join us. Sure, if you can get them to, great. But that shouldn't be the standard by which we measure success. Yeah, if you can bring people to your side, that's great. But we have to make the case and pass legislation, even if there's major disagreement, even if there's major opposition. How much of the country opposed women's suffrage? How much of the country opposed marriage equality? Great numbers. People who decry partisanship and want to advocate for some mushy middle really have no understanding of history at all and have no idea what it takes to make progressive change. To chip away and make dents and to eventually eliminate the patriarchy, white supremacy, and the inequality and misery that ensues is to see the injustice, call it out, demand change, and then to win. To win at the ballot box, to win legislative fights and court battles at the local and state level, and then in Congress and the White House and the Supreme Court. It takes the kid on the street, and it takes those of us who have a voice, who have eyes to see and ears to hear, and votes to cast. And it takes guys like John Lewis to advance these causes at the highest levels. It ain't easy, it ain't pretty, but show me another way. There isn't another way. So let's let John Lewis's life be an inspiration. He was fighting right up until the end. He was marching with Black Lives Matter right until the very end. So let's be inspired by that, okay? All right. A whole lot of things happened over the weekend. We got lots to talk about this week. And I didn't get to hardly any of it here. So we got a lot to talk about this week. Be sure you tune in. A reminder, the Friday and the Monday shows go out to all the platforms. So if you're a subscriber, you're hearing me right now, and I'm telling you, if you want to hear the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday shows as well, go to charlesburcell.com. There you go. Talk to you tomorrow. This episode of The Log is available right now wherever you find your podcasts, including Apple, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Or as I mentioned, go to charlesburcell.com for the full archive and all the other series in the podcast family. Follow, comment, and contact me on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks to our flagship station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Theme music composed and performed by Peter Donalds. From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and River West, the greatest neighborhood in the world, I'm Charles Burcell.